All of their ideas for preaching come from stuff that they've had to wrestle with. Now, one of the common mistakes with faith is that people think that faith is blind. Faith is not blind. Faith has never been blind. Faith is about understanding what you're putting your faith in. It's about logic and reason. See, if faith is blind, it's useless. It won't hold up. It won't keep you strong. Faith has to have a reason to it, which is why belief is the first step to faith. Now, does anyone know what a belief is? I'll just give you I actually thought I wrote it down, but I didn't. But belief is an opinion or judgment in which a person is fully persuaded. Our beliefs are things that we are thoroughly convinced about. So it's something that we put a lot of thought and effort into, and it becomes logical to us. But it is not faith just because we believe it. It is only faith when we put it into action. Now, too many times we make the mistake of having belief without action. Yet, we are called to have faith. Romans chapter 1, verse 16 and 7, we actually read this in our Bible class today. And it was interesting how we were talking about this very to face faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. How is the just to live? By faith. We're not to live by belief. Belief is important, but we're not living by belief because belief is inactive. Faith is actionable. Faith only exists through our actions. So we as a people, as Christians, as people who believe in God, are called to live by faith. What does that really mean? Well, I want to suggest to you what it means to me. In other words, if you believe in God, that He exists, if you believe that He loves you, that He died to save you, if you believe that He wants the best for you, if what's right, and this is the important part, you believe that as God, He has the right to do whatever He wants, then I want to suggest to you that your life should actually reflect that in order for you to live by faith. Do you get what I'm saying? Exists. If you believe that He loves you, if you believe that He died to save you, right, if you believe that you're absolutely He wants, then your life should reflect that belief. That's, to me, what it means to live by faith. James actually puts it another way. In James chapter 2, verse 18, he puts it another way. He says, now someone may argue, some people have faith and others have good deeds. But I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds. You see, James knew what it meant to live by faith. He wasn't saying that faith is, that the works is what saved you. And I want to be clear today that I'm not talking about salvation by works. There's only one way to be saved, and that's through the grace of God because of what Jesus did on the cross for us. That's the only way we're going to be saved. Nothing we do or don't do is going to save us. That I'm not talking, this is not a sermon on salvation. But I do want to be clear about something. Because in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, it says, "For by grace, and that salvation comes only by grace, but faith has to play a part." You see, if we truly believe we're saved, for us, if we truly believe that it is only through Him that we has the power to work in and through us all the good works that we produce, then our life needs to reflect that. And it's our faith, it's our life in action that reflects that reality. Does that make sense? If faith is belief in action, and this is what we're talking about this morning, faith in action. So I'll go back a step. If we believe that grace is enough to impact every part of our life and how we live. See, the just shall live by faith. And if we believe that, then our life should reflect what God has done for us and what He expects of us. And if it doesn't, then it isn't faith. It's just an untested belief. We just think it's probably right, but we may know or may not actually stand behind it when push comes to shove. You see, if faith is belief in action, and we are told to live by faith, then we need to understand that our life and our ability to weather the storms of life and to maintain our faith in God through the good times as well as the bad times requires more than just a belief that God exists and that He died for us. It requires more than just a belief that God died and saved us. If we are to survive in this world, if we are to weather the storms and the challenges that come our way, the belief, we need that. But if that's all it is, when real tests come our way, when we are truly tested, when we are truly asked to put our faith in God and put our belief on the line, if it is just a belief, it will not survive. We will not survive. We will not be able to live according to that belief. It is not faith. We will not live by faith. Faith in action. We should be so convinced of our belief in God and His ability to save us and His right to claim sovereignty over us that we are prepared to stake our life on that belief. Do you agree with that? I'm going to say that again. We should be so convinced, which is what belief is, right? We should be so convinced of our belief in God and His ability to save us and His right to claim sovereignty over us that we are prepared to stake our be frank about this. You know, I was at a ministers' meeting the other day and the president got up, and he's a good talker, the president. He's got a way with words and he's a good storyteller. But just in passing, one of the things hit me, and something that I thought about a lot. Because as Adventists, we believe that the end time is coming. And we believe that as Adventists, we're the ones that are going to be persecuted, right? If that is true, we're living in the biggest city in Australia. Who do you think is going to get persecuted first? The ones living in the city. And you know who they're going to go after first? The pastors. They're going to be the first. And he asked the question, are you ready to actually go to jail for your belief? Are you ready to be persecuted for your belief? It goes even further than just being persecuted. Are you ready to face whatever challenge the devil throws at you? It can be financial ruin. It could be health issues. It could be a whole range of different things that the devil will throw at you. Is your faith strong enough, or your belief strong enough to survive that? Because if it is, it is only your faith that will get you through. And I know, there are people whose faith was absolutely strong and they still lost their life. There's stories of martyrs who have lost their life and they've had to die for their faith. I know people, like Sandra's uncle, one of my best spiritual mentors that I've ever had was Sandra's uncle, Pastor George Quinlan. Sandra's my wife, for those of you who don't know. Pastor George Quinlan, he was an amazing man of faith. And he got cancer, and I remember we anointed him, and just before he came down to Sydney to the Sand to have his operation. And before he got anointed, he said to everyone there, he said, I have absolute faith that God can heal me, but I want people to know that even if I'm not healed, that does not affect my faith. We are to live by faith. The righteous shall live by faith. Faith in action. It doesn't necessarily mean because you have faith, you'll get the outcome that you want. What it means is that the devil's not going to discourage you or turn you away from God. No matter what he does, your faith in God is going to stand, because I believe whether you live or you die, I am still going to live. That's where my faith is. When you ask God to heal, he will heal. He may not heal right now, but he will when he comes back a second time. That's where my faith lies. But you cannot face the challenges of this life without putting your belief into action. Faith in action. And I want to, by way of example, I want to talk about a story in the Bible. It's one of my favourite stories. I find it to be an amazing. It's found. Now, I just want to give you a bit quick background of Daniel, because it's important. Nebuchadnezzar came to Jerusalem, defeated Jerusalem, and took away all of the good, young, healthy, strong, smart young men. And Daniel and his 3 friends were amongst them. And they were brought from a place they'd always known that was familiar to them. They had been brought up in the Jewish faith. Just like, I was brought up in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I was brought up a Christian. I was brought up knowing all about God, knowing who he was. I was told all the stories in the Bible. This is Daniel and his 3 friends. They'd all grown up in the faith. They knew who God was. They knew all the stories. They knew the scriptures. They knew the Bible. They believed in that. But all of a sudden, they were tested. They were took away from everything they knew and brought into another land. Now, just a couple of things. Daniel and his friends, they were part of the royal bloodline. They were taken from everything they knew, placed in a foreign country, given new names, taught a new language, taught a new religion, and given a new diet. This is where their belief was going to be tested. If their faith was ever going to be tested, it was going to be tested now. What was their first test? What was their first test? They had to eat unclean food. Now, that's not a big thing, is it? Eating unclean food? Not a big deal. You know, it's interesting how many Adventists I know, even church members that I've pastored, that don't think it's that big a deal. They don't even think it's that big a deal to drink. It's just not something they think is a real issue. It was a big issue to Daniel. Really just about the unclean food? Was it because there was a health thing? Was that the issue? Because we as Adventists tend to look upon it and says, it's a health issue. You know, he didn't want to be unhealthy. He's the temple of God. The issue for Daniel was more, and his three friends, was more than just the fact that it was unclean food, food that wasn't kosher, food that God had told them, the Israelite people, that they shouldn't eat. For him, he wanted to obey God in every part of his life, and that was important that was part of his belief system. And he was not going to dishonor God by doing that. So he goes, and it's interesting, right at the beginning, I want you to turn to Daniel chapter 1 verse 6 to 8. Daniel chapter 1 verse 6 to 8. Because here we have the beginnings of what Daniel and his three friends' faith looked like. They'd been taught. But here we have, right at the beginning of their time, right at the very beginning of the trial that they were just about to go through, of the life that they'd been ripped from. Now remember, they'd been ripped from a life that they knew, and they're basically in a foreign country being taught a foreign religion and taught foreign ways. It would have been easy for them just to fit in. But here is your clue. It says, now from among those sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. By the way, there's a lot of evidence that we're not sure exactly what those names mean, but there's a lot of evidence to show that they were based on pagan gods, on worship to pagan gods. So they were taken, it's like taking your Christian name and given a pagan name, yeah? They were given names that were totally foreign to what they believed in their belief system. They had no control over that, but they did have control over this. But Daniel and his three friends purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. Notice the words, he purposed in his heart. The Hebrew there is, he made up his mind. You see, faith starts with a decision. Now you can believe all you want, but when it comes to actually putting that belief into practice, it starts with a decision. Am I going to stand by my belief, or am I not going to stand by my belief? You know, one of the biggest issues I feel like we have in our church today? We are like the Laodicean church, and I'll tell you why I say that. I've seen it amongst our youth, but it doesn't just happen with our youth. Our biggest problem today is that why we believe all the things that are taught in the Bible, why we believe in God and we believe that He died for us, why we believe that He expects a certain standard from us, why we believe all of those things. You know what a lot of our church members are doing, and Christians in general do? They water it down. And what they do is they can come to church and do what they need to do at church and get partake of the Bible study. They can pray and they can and do all the good things that need to be done. But when they leave church and through the week, they're doing other things. I know of so many cases where people have come and led out in church or in Sabbath school or in praise. Then Saturday night they're out drinking. They're out partying. They'll do it on a Friday night. There are so many. To me, that is our biggest issue in our church. Because while we profess to believe all the right things, we're not prepared to stand by those beliefs. We want a foot in the world and a foot in the church. We want to be part of God's chosen people, but we also want to enjoy what the world has to offer. Like as if we're giving something up if we actually deny the world and accept God fully into our life. One of the greatest lies the devil has told our young people and Christians in general is that they are giving something up that is way more significant than what they're gaining. And it is so easy for us in today's world to just mingle a little bit of this and a little bit of that together so that our life is comfortable enough that we feel we're spiritual enough, but we're not really living the life that God expects us to live, or living the faith, living the beliefs systems that we really believe in or profess to believe. You see, Daniel could have done that. Daniel could have hid with his friends in this whole, I'm a captive. He could have said, I can't do anything about it. That's just, I just go along with it. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'll just go along with it. In fact, that's probably what a lot of them did. But Daniel wasn't prepared. He was not prepared to dilute his belief. His faith became faith. His beliefs became faith when he purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. So what did he do? He goes to the eunuch and he says to the chief eunuch, the one that is in charge of all of the slaves, and says, we and my friends, we don't want to eat what you've given us. And the eunuch says, well, tough, I'm not going to take responsibility for you not being healthy and stuff. You eat what we give you because that's what's good for you. Daniel says, well, how about you give us a trial? Exactly 10 days? Can't remember. Mind blank. But after that period, they were shown to be not just healthier, but way more intelligent. You see, it's not just about the healthy lifestyle. And we as Adventists like to carry on. The healthy lifestyle, we've got something special. Our health message is a great part of our belief system. But this story is not just about health. This story is more about putting his belief into action. He purposed in his heart. He made the decision, my faith is way more important than my life. And so he was And it's interesting, you know, like I want to, two things really quickly before I really get onto the story I want to. But faith in action in this case involved two things. And it involves us too, you know, faith in action. Made his mind up to be faithful to God. Your faith means nothing until you make that decision that it's everything. And you're prepared to sacrifice your very life for your faith in God. Seems extreme, doesn't it, to say that? But that's what it comes down to. He made his mind up to be faithful to God no matter what. And the second thing I think I'd like us all to consider is this. He chose a group of friends with the same purpose. It is hard to live a life of faith. It is hard to put faith into action when you surround yourself with people who have no faith, who don't have that same conviction. Now, I'm not saying that you should remove yourself from them, but what I am saying is that basically I'm saying we are to be in the world but not of the world. We need to engage with the people in the community. We need to be able to connect and form friendships and be able to connect with everyone, no matter what their background or their beliefs. We need to be able to do that as Christians. We need to be able to show love, and we need to be able to show empathy and be able to help people no matter what, and to be able to be friends with anyone no matter what. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about here is when it comes to our own spiritual journey, it is important for us to surround ourselves with people who are on that same journey. In Proverbs, verse 24 to 25, this principle is actually mentioned. It says, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul. It's not just about angry men. It's about anyone who believes different to you, because if you set your life around a person that believes different to you, you're going to be affected by what they believe. When I was a kid, I didn't want to drink. I made a vow I was never going to drink. And my friends used to say, oh, that's okay, you don't have to drink. And I can honestly say my friends never put pressure on me to drink, but I ended up drinking. Why? Because I surrounded myself with friends that drank. Important part of your spiritual journey, important part of living a life of faith is ensuring that you surround yourself with people who are also living a life of faith and who are on the same journey as you. Now I want to jump to these three boys. And they were only boys. Some say they weren't around 18 or so. They hadn't had a lot of life experiences. But it's an amazing story. And I want to go to that story. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego. We don't know where Daniel was at this time. The Bible doesn't actually say. And I kind of feel that Daniel was given the time off because the king knew that Daniel wouldn't bow down. He knew Daniel's reputation, so he gave Daniel time off. That's what I believe. There's nothing in the Bible to say that, but that's just what I believe. Because Daniel wasn't there. We don't know why he wasn't there. But Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, Daniel's three friends, were there. And the whole story behind this, for those who aren't unclear, is that Nebuchadnezzar had a dream of this big statue, and as a head of gold, and then the chest of silver, and then bronze, then iron, legs of iron, then feet of iron and clay. And it represent this Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon, was the head of gold, but after him would come another kingdom, the Medo-Persians, then after him would come the Greeks, and then there would be the Romans, and then there would be no more superpower after that. It would just be iron and clay, some weak, some strong. But there'd be no more world dominant power. And Nebuchadnezzar got to thinking about this and he says, no. His pride got to the better of him and he said, no, I am not the head of clay. I am the whole statue. And to prove that I'm the whole statue, to prove to everyone that my kingdom will never pass away, I am going to set up this statue and it's going to be all gold. Now Nebuchadnezzar knew about the God of the Israelites because Daniel had interpreted his dream. So he knew about the God of the Israelites, but he decided that he was bigger than the God of the Israelites. He was bigger than God of heaven. So he made this statue to basically say, I am a God. And he brought it to this big plain and he got everyone in his kingdom, all the noblemen, of me. As soon as you hear the music, I want everyone to bow. And I can imagine the buzz that's going around. They did not want to bow. But I guess they thought in their mind, it won't mean anything if I bow. It won't mean anything if I just go through the motions. Not really worshipping him. I think he's a twit, but I'll just do it anyway, just so I don't get in trouble and just to appease him. But what an idiot, But I'll do it anyway. Going with the flow. That would have been the easy thing to do. In fact, it was the easy thing to do because everyone did it. And I want to tell you something. A life lived by faith does not water down your belief. A life lived by faith does not allow for little compromises. And you are faced with those every single day. And tell me you're not. I know as a minister I am. You are faced with those decisions every single day. Just water it down just a bit. Just cut the edges off there. The main part of my belief is still intact, but, we can let that bit slide. We are faced with that, and it's easy just to explain it or argue it away, just to make yourself feel better about it and not to have to put yourself right out in front of everyone and make a big spectacle of yourself. And that's the easy way out. But a life filled with faith, life lived by faith, faith in action, that dictates that you've got to be different, that you have to stand, you have to put your belief into action. And I can just imagine there these three young men, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, looking at each other. You going to do it? No, I'm not doing it. Are you doing it? No way am I doing it. They're looking at each other. They had maintained that friendship and that social group, that camaraderie that allowed them to when the time hit, they said, no, we are standing for our beliefs. Their faith was in action. So when everyone bowed, when the music played and everyone bowed, and I can imagine they were scared as all heck. Just because you have faith doesn't mean to say you don't get scared, let me tell you. You can still get scared. They refused to water down their belief, and they made sure that they put their faith into action. And I can imagine this scene, everyone down, and these three men, they just sea of people bowed down, and these three men standing up, and you can imagine the ones closest to him going, get down, come on, get down, you're going to get killed, just get down. I can imagine the ones, there's commotion going, it just starts spreading. They're not getting down. And the voices start talking and all the attention just gets drawn straight to them. Do you have a faith that allows you to stand out for what you believe? And eventually it comes to the king, and the king looks and says, bring them to me. Bring them to me. So they get brought to the king. The king says, he knows who they are. He recognises them. He understands that they're Daniel's friends, and he's thinking, I really don't want to kill these guys. So he gives them a second chance. And this is what he says. In Daniel chapter 3, verse 14 to 15, he says, Nebuchadnezzar said to them, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you refuse to serve my gods or to worship the golden statue that I have set up? It's almost an incredulous thing. Is it true? You really not going to do that? How many times have you been somewhere? What, you're not coming because you're going to church on the... Who goes to church on the Sabbath? What, you can't have just one little drink? I had one person say to me when I couldn't go to some function that they were putting on, can't you ask your priest for a dispensation so that he'll give you permission to come on the Sabbath? Like, come on, surely you can just do it this once. Is it true that you're going to actually stand by your belief? Is that really true? Faith in action. The righteous are called to live by faith. We are not to be worried about being called out for what we believe. And I love the answer. Because the answer is, he says, I'll give you a second chance. He doesn't really want to do under the musical instruments, but if you refuse, you'll be thrown immediately into the blazing furnace. And then this is a challenge. See, what God will be able to rescue you from my power? Oh, he's on dangerous ground there. That's a challenge. Would you be prepared to take that challenge? Would you be prepared to take the challenge if someone said to you, are you really going to stand up for your belief? You're committing social suicide. You're not going to have any friends. Nothing's going to save you from this if you do what you do. You're just going to be unpopular. Would you be prepared to take a challenge like that? Put your faith in action. So he says, go back. Let's do the music again. When you hear the music, I want to see you bow down. I love their reply. This is one of the greatest replies in the Bible, I believe. And if you haven't read it lately, you need to read it, because this is what faith looks like. This is living by faith. This is faith in action, because in Daniel 3:16 to 17, it says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. This is the part I like. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the golden statue you have set up. That's faith in action. That's belief put to the test. That is living by faith. Would you have the courage to live by faith under those circumstances? We are put to the test every single day. The devil has every which way to get under our skin, to challenge us, to bring us down. He is always looking at ways to bring us down, and he knows every single little trick in the book. What's your faith like? That's faith in action. That's what I want to be like. They knew God had the power. But you know what the faith was? It wasn't the faith that they knew had the power. The faith is that they gave him the sovereign right to do whatever he wanted to do in their life. They gave him that right. They trusted him implicitly, that even if he decided that the cause was better for them to perish than to be saved, they trusted him implicitly to stand up to the king and said, there is no way we're going to bow down to you. We serve one God. The sovereignty of God in your life is the faith that will take you through the storms of life. That is what gets you through everything that the devil throws at you, no matter what it is. To be able to say, God, I am yours 100% and you can do whatever you like. I am not changing my faith and my belief in you. That's faith in action. You know what the end result of that faith was? Do you know what the end result was? They got chucked into the furnace that was so hot that it killed the people that chucked them there, that put them into the furnace. And you know what their reward was? They got to walk with Jesus. That was their reward for the faith that they had. They got to walk with their Maker, Creator and Saviour. That's the reward that we can look forward to. A life lived by faith. That's the reward. A life that says, God, you are in complete control. I give you my life 100%. No matter what, it's yours. The reward is exactly the same. You know, God calls us to live by faith, to live a life of faith. And there will be times when you will be tested, where you will feel the pressure to water down your morals and your values. There will be times when you are challenged and put in situations that seem like there is no way out. There will even be times when you will have to make enormous sacrifices for what you believe. Maybe even the ultimate sacrifice. But I want to say this, either you trust God or you don't. Either you commit to him or you don't. Either you let him work in your life or you don't. Either you accept him or you don't. Either you hold fast to your faith and live a life of faith or you don't. This is an important topic because there's one last verse. This is the verse I'm going to finish on. There's one last verse. This is important. I want to tell you why this is important. Because there's a really interesting text. Oh, it's not there. I didn't put it in. Let me look it up. 1 John chapter 5, verse 4. And I'm reading from the New Living Translation. For every child of God defeats this evil world, and we achieve this victory through what? Our faith. And in the New King James Version, I'll read it from that. For whatever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that has overcome the world. The victory that has overcome the world is what? Our faith. You want victory over the devil? You want to send the devil packing? Do you know in the armour of God, what is the thing that's used as the faith? Shield. The devil has nothing that can penetrate you when you have faith. There is nothing that the devil can do to bring you down when you have faith. Faith is the victory that overcomes the world. Praise God, yeah? We have something that we can hold on to that the devil has no answer for. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego chose to honour God above all else, even their own life. Their faith was more than just a belief. The devil had no answer for that faith. He has no weapon in his arsenal that can penetrate your faith. So I want to say to you, have faith. Live a life of faith, because faith is the victory that overcomes the world. Faith in action. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, for that very thought-provoking and challenging sermon this morning. Faith is a victory is our next hymn that overcomes the world. Can you please stand? And we'll sing this to the glory of God.